Welcome to the Gary and Stein Sports Show, joined by my co-host Will Stein. I'm Troy Gary. Our podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and Anchor, as various other platforms in the Sideline Sports Network. Check your favorite streaming service for that. On today's show, we're joined by former Major League Baseball player Denny Neagle, 20-game winner, couple World Series, and so we're going to get right into it. Denny, how you doing today?
I'm great, Troy. How are you guys doing?
I'm great. Question for you. How did you go to the University of Minnesota? What was the recruiting process like? And how did you determine that?
Well, obviously I went for the warm weather. No. My high school baseball coach, Bernie Walter, who unfortunately actually just passed away this past year, but he was a legend in the high school baseball industry and stuff. But he coached in the Junior Olympics with Rob Fornasier, who was John Anderson's longtime assistant coach there at the University of Minnesota. And after he got back from the Junior Olympics, it was after the summer after my junior year in high school, and I was getting ready to look at like NC State, Maryland, Georgia, all the schools on the East Coast where I'm from. And he said, "You got to go to Minnesota. That's the school for you." I'm like, "Minnesota? It's freezing there, man." But he's like, "Denny, I'm telling you, I love Rob Fornasier and Coach Anderson. He tells me is everything, that we preach here at your high school and stuff too." So I took my visit, my fall of my senior year, and just fell in love with Coach Anderson and his coaching staff, the university. They did it right too. They brought me in homecoming weekend against Ohio State, and they beat Ohio State that year. Keith Byers, I think, was the All-American running back that Ohio State had, and Minnesota just like crushed him that game, held him to like 50 yards rushing or something. It was just crazy. I had a great time that weekend, so it definitely solidified me coming to the University of Minnesota.
Okay, speaking about Minnesota, you were drafted in the third round in 1991, or excuse me, 89. I'm sorry. How was that process like, and what were you doing when you got the call from the Twins?
Well, I'll never forget it. My dad had flew in prior to the draft to watch the last weekend series of the Big Ten play, and unfortunately, we missed out on Big Ten conference that year. Probably had one of the better teams that I had all 3 years there when I was there. But anyway, so my dad ended up staying through the draft because there was rumblings that I might even go in the late first round even too. So to have my dad there with me and experience that was just something I'll never forget, because I unfortunately lost my dad this past December, and he was always my biggest fan. And so, he didn't want to miss out on that. So that was a big thrill for me to have him there. But to be drafted by the Twins, because I was considered, even though I grew up in Maryland, the Twins felt as guys who went to the University of Minnesota too were local products as well too. So it was a pretty neat process to be able to get drafted from my adopted hometown team and stuff. And Terry Ryan was the director of scouting then, and he flew out to Maryland and met with me and my mom and dad. My dad was pretty much acting as my agent back then. And, but the whole process was unbelievable. But to be able to stay in Minnesota, and start my career with the Minnesota Twins after going to the University of Minnesota was a pretty special deal for me.
Okay, July 1991, you make your major league debut in the middle of a playoff hunt. Can you walk us through that day, and then how did you get the call? I'm sure probably the day before by your AAA manager.
Yeah, it actually. So my whole process started getting called up when the every year in the when somebody gets inducted in the Hall of Fame, they used to try to have two teams play in the Hall of Fame game that same Hall of Fame weekend, who with the teams of the guys that are getting elected. So I think that year it was, I'm trying to remember if it was
Rod Carew, I think.
Yeah, I think it was Rod Carew. I think it was maybe Carew. And then Gaylord Perry, I think, was going in for the Giants. So the Twins played the Giants in the exhibition game there at the Doubleday Field, I think it's called, or whatever. And so the Twins, just like most teams do in those kind of exhibition games, they don't want to use one of the regular starters because it's an important stretch of the season. So I got called up from AAA to pitch that game. And I had heard that was kind of like a showcase thing for me. And sure enough, it was. And it was almost not fair because in those games, it's kind of the unwritten rule too, that players get fined if they take a strike, because the guys on the big league club, they just want to get in and get out, and get to the next city that they're going to and stuff. So it made my job a little bit easier because all the Giants were swinging at everything for me that day. So it kind of helped out my little showcase exhibition game there. But I did pitch really well. I think I went 5 or 6 innings, only gave it 1 run against Kevin Mitchell and Will Clark, Matt Williams, and those guys and stuff. So that was a big thrill. They sent me back down to AAA the next day, and I don't even think I didn't make another start. I was getting ready to start. We were in Edmonton, Canada, and Russ Nixon was the veteran manager we had in AAA. He was a big league manager once upon a time as well too. And he called me in the office, and he definitely made me think I did something wrong the night before and got in trouble for something. And I was like, Russ, I was in bed at 10 o'clock, man. I didn't do anything. So he read me the riot act and got me going for a little bit. And then he said, I'm just messing with you. You're going up to the big leagues, kid. And I was like, wait, what? And so it was pretty cool how he got me on that. And back then we didn't have cell phones, so I had to go out and use the payphone right outside the stadium there in Edmonton and call my dad and tell him, hey, what are you guys doing this weekend? And they're like, geez, I don't know. We got nothing going on. I said, well, you might want to get some travel arrangements done because you got to come up to Minnesota and watch your son make his big league debut. So that was pretty incredible, pretty special feeling.
Awesome. Go ahead, Will.
Cool.
But I'll tell you what, the whole game though too was just, it was crazy because we were playing the Brewers, who was, the crosstown rival. Twins were in first place. The Brewers were having a good season too. It was sold out. There was 52,000 that night or whatever it was in the Metrodome. My first big league hitter I faced is Paul Molitor, future Hall of Famer, University of Minnesota guy. He laces one to left off me. My first big league strikeout is Willie Randolph. I gave it my first big league home run that game to Dale Swain. And then in the third inning, I believe it was the third, I was winning 2-1, and Candy Maldonado hit about 120 mile an hour fastball back at my head. The only thing I could do was just, the quickest thing I could do is put my arm up. It hit just below the point of my elbow. And the doctor said if it had hit that point, it could have shattered my elbow. So I could have made my major league, my first and last start in the big leagues on the same day. Fortunately, it was just a deep bone bruise, and I only had to go on the 15-day disabled list. But the worst part about that whole thing was, the old Metrodome, it was a pretty long walk from the pitcher's mound to the dugouts, and from the dugouts all the way up the stairs to the locker rooms, at the old Metrodome. And they kept replaying that thing on the big screen TV over and over. My mom had said she almost got sick 2 or 3 times trying to watch it, not watch it. And all I could hear was 52,000 people, every time they kept replaying it, just going, "Oh God!" So that was not the funnest moment.
Well, great story. Go ahead, Will.
So I know the following year you went to Pittsburgh. If I remember correctly, Barry Bonds was a teammate of yours. How was it like playing with Barry Bonds for that first season of yours in Pittsburgh?
I'll tell you what, Barry gets a bad rap with a lot of things and stuff. He's a different guy. He's a different character and stuff, whatever. He kind of marches to his own beat, so to speak. But I had nothing but great things to say about Barry. I loved my time with him. He always respected me, even though I was a young guy. I was a rookie still. I still have my rookie status with the Pirates. But he always treated me with respect. I always tell us one story. There was a restaurant/bar right across from Three River Stadium called the Clark Bar. And Mike LaValliere and John Smiley and a couple of Pirates players were part owners of the bar. So that was the place we always gathered after the games when we had family and stuff. There was a private back room that had like a pool table in there that was just for the players and stuff. And, as anything goes, if it's seniority, if you're Barry Bonds, you got first dibs on that room. Well, my brother and one of his friends were in town, and I brought them back there. We were just shooting pool, hanging out, just me and my brother and his buddy. And I had to go to the bathroom, which was in a different room. So I left, and all of a sudden, I guess when I was gone, I get back and my brother says, "Dude, Barry Bonds just came in." I go, "Oh crap, did he want the room?" He goes, "Denny, that was the thing." He said, "Wait, who are you? Oh, wait, you're little Neagle." He goes, "Oh, you guys are good, man." And of course, my brother was like, "Barry, if you need the room, we'll leave." He goes, No, man, you guys are good, man." And that's the kind of guy Barry was for me. He never big leagued me, and he always treated me with respect, treated any of my family and friends with respect. So, and then not only that, just to be able to watch that guy play on a day in and day out basis was just, incredible, because I had the best seat in the house to watch arguably the greatest player of our generation play every night.
Sweet. Speaking of Pittsburgh, no offense to John Smiley, but I think Kenny McPhail got that one wrong. So let's talk about then Atlanta. 1997. That's unbelievable year. Even 98. You're arguably a part of the best rotation in MLB history. Just talk about that season and the year after. You won 20 games. I mean, playing with Greg Maddox, John Smoltz, Tom Glavine. I mean, just talk about that experience.
Thank God those guys started finally listening to me and taking my advice. They became such better. No, but kind of like the comment I just made with Barry. I felt the same way in pitching that rotation with those guys. I had the best seat in the house every night when I wasn't pitching to watch three future Hall of Famers go at it. And if you can't learn from watching guys like Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz do their thing, then there's something wrong with you. Because again, like I said, I have the best seat in the house, so I can sit back, watch the way they go about their business, not only on the mound, but also off the field, behind closed doors, in the video room, watching how they, watch the hitters on film, what they're thinking about. So to be able to pick their brains, was a valuable thing for me. And I used to get the question a lot once I got traded over there was, what's it like pitching the rotation with those guys? Well, it must be a lot of pressure. And my answer always was, look, nobody was going to put the greatest amount of pressure on me than myself. I was my own worst critic. I was my own worst enemy. I expected big things out of myself. So I didn't mind the pressure of being in that rotation. And I always said, I felt like pitching in that rotation was like running a 100-yard dash, it's like running a 100-yard dash. If you run a 100-yard dash with three other guys that that you could beat, you beat them every time. Yeah, you're probably going to win the race again, but you're probably not going to run your best times. Now, if you run that race with three guys that are just as fast, if not faster than you might not win that race, but you're probably going to be posting the best times you've ever posted. And that's how I felt with those guys. I might not, get all the accolades and the awards that some of these guys get, but they elevated my game to another level. And I'd like to think that I had a small part in helping them do that too, because there's always that competitiveness, amongst each other and stuff. Your guys are lying if they said there wasn't, and in my eyes, I'd watch Smoltz go out and strike out 13 guys. I'd watch Maddox go out and throw a 79 pitch complete game. Glavine would go out and get, 15 ground ball outs. So now when it's my turn, I'm like, man, I don't want to be the low man on the totem pole. So I got to go do my thing, and my thing was just, throwing strikes, working ahead, using all my pitches and trying to be economical with them and stuff. And again, those guys elevated me to another level. And that was a huge reason why I was able to win 20 games in 97. And then in 98, we did a pretty incredible thing that I'll always be proud about. And it's talked about to this day, even too, in baseball, the record books and everything. When I won my 16th game in my last start of the season, we became the first 5-man rotation that all five won 16 or more games since I believe it was 1904. So, it had been 94 years, almost a century that had happened. So that was pretty incredible to be part of something like that. Because when you throw Kevin Millwood in the mix, who was our fifth starter, I mean, that was a pretty daggone good 5-man rotation.
No doubt. So the nickname, the Four Aces, would you give yourself diamonds, clubs, spades, or hearts? And what would you give the other three?
Well, considering I'm a lover, I'd probably give me the hearts. No, but that was a fun thing. That was a great nickname because all four of us used Wilson gloves. So Wilson took advantage of that and came out with these cool posters of us holding our gloves, staring into the camera with as menacing as we could look, whatever. And it was, I think the poster said 4 aces, 1 brand of glove. So that was pretty cool to be able to be part of that and do some promotion stuff with Wilson. But again, I mean, labels are fun and all that stuff and everything, but just to, like I said, for me, it was just to be able to be part of that rotation and be able to pick those guys' brains and feed off of them. That's what really meant as much to me as anything.
Now, speaking of picking brains, what was it like playing for Bobby Cox, and how did you pick his brain when you were in Atlanta?
To be honest with you, I don't think you really had to pick Bobby's brain much because you just learned from watching that guy of how professional he was and how he went about his business, how much he cared deeply for every single one of the guys on that team. We all felt like, that Bobby was a father figure to a lot of us. And then later in his career, he almost became like a grandfather figure to some of those young kids by the tail end of Bobby's coaching career. But I always said a lot of managers always made that statement of my door's always open. You can come in and talk to me about anything. But not all of them kind of followed up on that. I played for some managers that would make that same comment, and you're kind of like, I don't know if that's so much true. But with Bobby, when he said something like that, you knew he meant it. Bobby was the type of guy that I told this story not that long ago that he never ever showed up a player to the media on the field. The only thing that ever came close was Andrew Jones's rookie year. I think he was still a rookie in '97. He came up in '96, but anyways, Andrew kind of loafed after a ball in the outfield, and it's the one and only time I ever saw Bobby do something like this. But he pulled Andrew Jones in the middle of it was like the fourth or fifth inning, and sat him down. But nothing was said. He didn't get in his face in the dugout so the TV and the media could get some great shots of it or anything. And then afterwards, he handled it behind closed doors in his office. And then when the media came in and they wanted a quote from Bobby, they should have known better, first of all, because the media knows how he is. And Bobby said one thing and one thing only. Look, that's handled behind closed doors. Andrew and I are clear on things of how I expect things to be done around here. And that's it. End of story. And Bobby looked at the media and said, I don't want to hear any one of you guys going out there and trying to get a quote from him. It's done. It's over with. It's settled. Next question. Almost like the Belichick, we're on to Cincinnati. Bobby was that way with the media too. He's like, look, that's the way you guys know I handle it. And that's how he handled everything. Nobody ever knew if anything was going on, if somebody had a problem or something. It's just, that's the way Bobby was. And we all respected him. And that's why, whenever there was alumni weekends and stuff, you always saw just a tremendous amount of guys come back from him because we all love that man.
Okay. Talk about your first World Series start.
The infamous Jim Leyritz home run in '96. Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, here I was, I'm thinking we're on the verge of winning the World Series. My first World Series, the Braves had just won it in '95, but I got traded to him in '96. So to go into New York and win the first two games and win them pretty handily. I mean, we blew them out the first game, and then Maddox, did one of his typical Maddox games, and I think we won the second game 5-1 or 5-0. I can't remember what the final score was, but we handled it pretty easily in New York. So to come home, we're thinking we got this thing wrapped up. I'm not going to lie. We did feel really good about it. And then, game 3, David Cohn outpitches Glavine. But then, here comes my game in game 4. And, I had the game under control. It's still one of my regrets. I felt like that I didn't put the hammer down, so to speak. Even now I'm a varsity pitching coach for my son's team here in Colorado. And one of my favorite phrases and sayings to these guys is, look, when you have somebody down, don't ever let up. As soon as you let up, even whether it's a good or bad team or team you should beat or team on paper that is even with you, either way, when you have somebody down, you step on that throttle and you don't let up. And I felt like I made that mistake in my start in game 4 because we were winning 6-0 at one point. I felt so good about, the way things were going. And I'll never forget it. Kirby Puckett, my old teammate from the Twins, was sitting in the front row with Cal Ripken because I think Kirby had just gotten the Roberto Clemente Man of the Year award. And, I love Kirby. And I was on deck. I was getting ready to hit National League. And I looked over Kirby and he smiled at me for a second. I winked at him and kind of smiled at him big. And he was, even Kirby goes, come on now, let's go, stay locked in. And sure enough, right after that is when I couldn't get out of the 6th inning and Bobby had to make it, go get somebody in the bullpen earlier than he wanted to, back in those days when pitchers would go 6-7 innings still in the postseason. But anyways, long story longer, that was my one regret when I look back at it because I felt like I did kind of, because I was a goofy guy, a jokester in between starts. But once it was my day, everybody knew, don't mess with me. I'm locked in. It's my one out of 5 days to get locked in. And I felt like I didn't stay locked in like I normally should have. I shouldn't have been winking at Kirby and smiling at him on deck. I should have just stayed focused and stuff. But it is what it is. We were still winning the game 6-3. And then, old Jim Leyritz comes up and hits a 3-run homer off Mark Wohlers, which, still to this day, it ticks me off that Mark Wohlers gets a bad rap on that, because he was one of the best closers. He was the best closer in baseball that year. And the reason why is because he started finally throwing his slider and split for strikes as opposed to just reaching back and trying to throw 99, 100 miles an hour, And so Leyritz is one of the best fastball hitters ever that I've ever seen in the game in our time for sure. And so, that's the old saying, you can't get a fastball by him. So he kept fouling off his fastball. So Wohlers finally throws the slider and, he hangs a little bit and Leyritz hits the 3-run bomb. And to this day, fans still second guess that thing, but I think it was the right pitch. But the rest is history. They got the momentum after that, and stuff. Pettit outduels Smoltz the game 5, and then we go and lose game 6. So that was tough.
Okay, go ahead, Will.
All right. So I know you said that you put the biggest pressure on yourself when you pitch. What was it like pitching in New York with the additional pressure, if you want to call it that, when you were with the Yankees?
Yeah, there's no question, Will. I mean, the New York media is a whole nother animal, and I mean, after every start, like my days with the Pirates, I'd come back to my locker and there might be maybe two camera crews, sometimes usually just one, and three or four or five beat writers, from the one local paper and a couple outside papers and stuff. And then you go to New York and there's 15, 20 cameras in your face, 30 to 40 reporters from all over, all the different, newspapers and media resources and stuff around New York and New Jersey and Connecticut and stuff, whatever. So it's just crazy the amount of pressure that's added just from being a New York Yankee. But but again, well, I mean, I've always told people, like I said, I'm going to be my own worst critic. So I felt like I handled that part, good. I didn't finish the regular season like I wanted to. However, what people forget though too is that as a team that year, we struggled. We were hobbling into the postseason that year. I think we lost 13 out of our last 14 games or 13 out of our last 15. And the only reason why we made it is because we had got off to such a big lead against the Red Sox. We had like a 11 or 12 game lead with 20 days left in the season or something. And by the end, I think we only still won by like a 3-game margin or something like that because of how bad we played down the stretch. And everybody was writing us off, but it was the Yankees, and we had, Jeter and Bernie Williams and Tino and Roger Clemens and Andy Pettitte. And I felt like, I did my part even in the postseason too. I mean, it's another sore spot for me. And then I felt like, when Joe pulled me in my start in Game 4 of the World Series, people like to call, what is it? The infamous 4 2/3 start, because he pulled me with 2 outs and nobody on after literally 2 weak fly balls into right. But of course, the New York media said Neagle after giving up, 2 deep fly balls to right. And I'm like, I guess this was like fake media before fake media, I guess, or something. I don't know. But, the really reason, the big reason why Joe pulled me, to be honest with you, and I had no problem with this. He brought in David Cohn for me. Coney was his guy. I love David Cohn. He's one of my favorite teammates. And like I told people, there was even rumors that Joe was maybe even going to start him in place of me for that Game 4 start. And I said, look, if Coney gets to start, he deserves it because he's got a proven track record. His World Series numbers were crazy ridiculous at that point. It's just unfortunate for him. He was just, more on the downside of his career. And he didn't have the best season that year and was, dealing with different injuries and stuff, whatever. So Joe brought him in to face Piazza for me, and he threw 3 pitches, got an out, and stuff, whatever. And so everybody speculated that Joe was just trying to get him to win. It's funny because it backfired because then Jeff Nelson came in after David Cohn and struck out 4 out of the next 5 hitters that he faced, and he ended up getting the win for the official scorer. So, but either way, look, as far as I'm concerned, we won the World Series 4-1. I felt like I did my part. I held us in every game I started that season, that postseason. So, I got a ring out of it. It was almost like, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh gosh. Well, but to lose my first World Series against the Yankees after feeling like we were going to win it back in '96, and then to turn around and win my first World Series with the Pinstripes in New York with my whole family there was pretty incredible.
Awesome. So you were traded for a handful of times in your career. How is it? How is the process like? I mean, I know you hear rumors all the time. Did you know some of these trades were going to go through, or did you just kind of block that out until it happened?
Well, the very first time I got traded, I heard nothing. When I got traded from the Twins to the Pirates, I was in spring training. We were on the backfield doing pitchers fielding practice, covering bunts, covering first base, and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, there was nothing. I'm telling you, Troy, there's usually, even, way before social media days, you would still hear rumblings, or your agent would call you, hey, I'm starting to hear something. There's a chance you might get traded. There was nothing. I didn't get a phone call from anybody. So out of nowhere, Tom Kelly yells to Dick Such, the pitching coach, hey, Such, send me Neagle. So, of course, the veteran guys, Jack Morris and some of the other guys are going, uh-oh, what'd you do, kid? I'm like, I get almost like that story when I told you when I got called up. I go, I swear I was in bed at like 9 o'clock last night. I didn't do anything. And so Kelly starts walking me, around the backfields there and puts his arm around me. And he says, Mr. McPhail's just informed me you've been traded to the Pirates. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And so, it took a little bit to sink in, because I remember during the '91 postseason, and it was right before the World Series before the Twins won that year. And somebody wrote an article. I can't remember if it was like Sid Hartman or somebody, but somebody wrote an article talking about the future of the Twins. How the future's looking good too. And Andy McPhail was quoted as saying, if there's one thing I learned from my dad in this business is you never trade away our good young pitching. So one thing's for sure is that, Pat Mahomes, Denny Neagle, Willie Banks, those kind of guys, you're going to see them in a Twins uniform for years to come. And then flash forward the next spring training, and lo and behold, I get traded. So I think that's why that came as such a shock. But it worked out great for me because my mom was from Pittsburgh. Her dad, who passed away when she was young, but he was a Pittsburgh police officer, used to work games at Forbes Field. Cops, work games at the football and baseball stadiums and stuff. So my mom and my grandfather and my grandmother grew up huge Pirates fans. So my parents, my mom especially, was thrilled. I'm going to be playing for her first favorite team that she ever loved. And, her dad, like I said, her dad being a Pittsburgh police officer. So that was crazy and ended up working out for the best for everybody. But then the craziest one for me was when I got traded from the Pirates to the Braves then, because there were a bunch of rumors then. That's by then, I had established myself as a pretty decent left-handed pitcher in the National League. And so the rumors were flying. I'd had a meeting already with the general manager. He sat me down at a breakfast meeting one day, and he just said, look, we'd like to sign you, but the reality is we're probably going to have to trade you. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. And so my only request was I wanted to stay in the National League. I kind of like hitting, and stuff, whatever. And so he said, don't worry, I think you're going to be happy. But the rumors were the Indians, I think the Red Sox were in there, the Mets, a couple other teams, but I never once was the Braves brought up. So that was the big shock. I knew I was going to get traded, but then, the craziest thing, Troy, I'm not sure if you remember this part, but I pitched against Smoltz the night before. Smoltz was having his Cy Young year, and so I had a really good game. I beat him 2-1, and then I get traded either that night or the next morning to the Braves. So I'm still in Pittsburgh. And now when you come into Three River Stadium, you come down the one tunnel and you go right to the home clubhouse, left to the visitor. I'll never forget. I went right, like I always do, because I'm so used to going on the home side. And I was like, crap, that's right. I got to go left. So I go in the visitors locker room, and Terry Pendleton, the veteran of the Braves, says, there he is. All right, let me get the fines out, for Kangaroo Court. And he's like, so you beat Smoltz, and Smoltz is going for his Cy Young year. That's at least $100. You strike me out twice last night. That's another $200. And then the big one was earlier that year in Atlanta, I threw a nasty change of David Justice, and he swung and missed so hard out in front that he popped his shoulder out and dislocated his shoulder. And Justice had to miss the rest of the season. So he goes, and then you messed up our boy DJ's shoulder with that stupid changeup of yours, and that's probably $1,000. I said, don't worry, I'll cover it, man. He goes, no, I'm just kidding, kid. Come over here, man. Welcome to the good side now. But that was crazy just to change locker rooms, the next day, going from one team to the next.
Sweet. What's your favorite Kirby Puckett memory? Now, I know you kind of talked about him a little earlier, but was that the one, or was it when you were with the Twins?
I'll be honest with you. I think some of my favorite Kirby Puckett stories started when I was at the University of Minnesota still, because Kirby used to come and take BP against us, to start get ready for spring training and stuff. So he would work out with us when we were over at the huge indoor complex over there that Lou Holtz had built when he was there. So I got to face him a few times, so that was nuts just to be able to see how the ball came off his bat, man, at such a young age and stuff. So that was crazy. But then we used to have pickup, John Anderson, who's still the head coach of the University of Minnesota. We used to, back in those days, we could have access to the old Williams Arena. So he'd line up some pickup basketball games. And the one night he goes, come on, kid, I was a freshman, because I'm bringing you down to Williams Arena. We're going to play some pickup basketball games. He goes, I'm bringing a couple extra friends with me. So it was me and a couple of other baseball players, and then I think a couple of football players from the U. But I get in there, and there's Kirby Puckett warming up, and he goes, there he is. What's up, Frank Viola Jr.? That's what he started calling me, because I threw the changeup like Frankie V back then too. And so to be able to play basketball with him and have, Kirby just, jawing at you, and ribbing you a little bit, giving me crap, stuff like that. Those are the times I'll never forget, because he treated me so well. Just, here I was, just this young, freshman punk kid, whatever, and stuff, just trying to make my way through college. But those are times I'll never forget about Kirby.
Sweet. I have a quick question. Did you get a World Series ring in '91?
I did not. Nope. That was crazy. Every team's different, and the Twins were just different. And to be honest with you, Troy, I really didn't care for myself. I think I was up for like 72 days in '91, and I was like 0-1 with a 4 ERA. Didn't even get a win for the team. So for me personally, I was like, man, I kind of feel weird about getting one anyways. But I did feel really bad for a few other guys, like Pedro Munoz. He was up for like 90 or 100 days that year. He hit 300 with like 5 home runs, 30 RBIs, something like that. Paul Abbott, was a great, good pitcher. Him and I came up together. Paul, I think, went like 4-1 or 4-2 with, in 50 or 60 innings. And neither one of those guys got rings as well, too, and so I just kind of found that a little weird, and stuff. I felt like those guys definitely deserved it because they were certainly part of that team, and helped them get to the postseason. So, but every team's different.
Yeah, it's not like the NFL where everybody, even if they, play for 5 seconds, gets a ring. So I was just curious because, I was saying Wikipedia needs to change that. But now that you clarified that, go ahead, Will. Anything else?
So when you went to Colorado, how difficult was it to pitch in Colorado with different air and all that good stuff?
Yeah, it was really tough, Will. I'm not going to lie. I knew what I was getting into, and if I had it all over again, I would do it all over again. I was married at the time. I'm divorced now, but I get on great with my ex. But my wife at the time, her dad was suffering from a disease called PSP. It's progressive supranuclear palsy. It's a lot like ALS, but it was just a lot harder to diagnose. Remember the Dudley Moore, the actor from Arthur? He was the first guy that was diagnosed that with as far as a celebrity. So he kind of brought light to the disease and made it, put it out in the public a little bit more and helped a little bit for people to, to get the diagnosis sooner and stuff, whatever. But still, it's a tough disease because it's, like I said, it's a very similar to ALS where they just are trapped in their own bodies and stuff. And so right before I was getting ready to sign, he had taken a turn for the worse. And so my wife wanted to be close to him and be able to spend time with him because we knew he was only going to have so much more time left because sure enough, he ended up passing away early in the 2002 season. So before 2001 is when I was a free agent. And I was really, really close to signing with the Dodgers or the Mets, but I knew she wanted to be close to home to him and stuff, whatever. And so to me, it was a sacrifice I was willing to make. And I knew what I was getting into. It is what it is. I wish things could have been different baseball wise, but the toughest thing, to be honest with you, Will, is it's the ball, you're going to give up achieve home runs. Your pitches don't break as much because of thin air. Your sinkers and changeups don't move as much. It's tougher to grip the ball because the balls get slicker. That's why they tried the humidor and different things like that. But the toughest thing, and Greg Maddux always talked about this, he was like, man, one thing that stinks about Coors Field is whenever I would come in to pitch here, like with the Braves or the Cubs or whatever, he said, after just one start, throwing 7 innings, 100 pitches, it felt like I threw 200 pitches. And he said, there were some times where it took me like 2 more starts to kind of get over that soreness of my whole body, and I said, yeah, imagine doing that for 17, 18 starts a year there. So that's what really beats you up. There's a reason why the Olympic athletes train in Colorado Springs, and that's where the Olympic Village is, because if you can train at this kind of altitude and get your body to adapt to that, then imagine how good your body will be then at altitude.
Sweet. I got a fun fact for our viewers before we go to the next segment. You were one of the select few that won 20 games in the minors and in the majors. So do you remember that year with the Twins, 20 games? Well, it was combined, but can you talk a little bit about that real quick?
Oh man, I definitely remember that. I'll never forget that. It's something I'm very proud of because it is such a rare thing because in the minor leagues, you don't have as many starts as you do in the big leagues. So to be able to accomplish that in a semi-shorter season compared to the big leagues was a big thrill for me, but it was just incredible. I mean, I got off to that great start in Visalia where I went 8-0 and I just felt like everything was working. And the good thing for me was at that level of A-ball, that high A, none of those guys could really hit a changeup yet. They just didn't learn how to stay back and make the adjustment on a good changeup or a good breaking ball. So for me, I could go fastball, changeup all game and have success there. And then when I got called up to Double A, you always hear that the Double A league is the weeding out league, and that's where you really find out if you have a chance to make it the big leagues or not, if you can have success there. So to carry that same success over that I had in Visalia into Orlando and finished, I think 12-3 with them and finished 20-3 was an incredible thing. And obviously that helped catapult me, and give me a kind of a quick route to the big leagues and stuff. So it was just a fun, incredible year. I had such great coaches and great teammates. Ron Gardenhire was my manager in Orlando, and stuff. I'll never forget Gardy. He was just one of the best and still one of my favorite baseball people in the game of baseball today. So it was just a thrill for me that whole season.
Awesome. Next, so let's talk about foundation that's near your family. Just go ahead and let's talk about what it is and how people can, help out or donate and the cause.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Troy, I know you and I were talking about this the other day, and I know this hits close home to you as well too, with what you share with me. But in 2006, unfortunately, we lost my nephew, Connor Freed, my older sister Debbie's son, to a drowning accident at a local country club pool back in Maryland, where I grew up, called the Crofton Country Club. My sister was working that day. She was in real estate back then, and her son was being babysat by a friend of the family, good friend they knew, and he said, "I'm taking my kids to the pool. Is it okay if I take Connor too?" She said, "Yeah, just make sure he wears his floaties." He was only 5. He still wasn't a great swimmer, so he always had those floaties that kids wear on the arms. And we still have never been able to confirm this, but we feel that he'd gone to the bathroom. The guy who was babysitting him said, he asked if I can go to the bathroom. He said, "Yeah." He took his floaties off to go to the bathroom because he was going to get something to eat and everything too. And at some point from going to the bathroom to him waiting for him to come back, all of a sudden there was a ruckus and everything. And, they found some woman scream, "There's a kid in the pool." And he was underneath a lifeguard chair. And we feel like he probably got bumped in because Connor was never that type to just say, "I'm going to jump in the deeper end." He just wouldn't do that. So it was a crowded day. We feel like he probably got bumped in. And the most unfortunate part of the whole situation, Troy, and this is why it leads me up to the foundation, was even on the 911 call, you can hear the 911 dispatcher saying, "Ma'am, or sir, ma'am," I can't remember if it was a boy or girl that answered the phone, "but do you have an AED there?" And they said, "Yeah, but none of us know how to use it." The only person that knew how to use it at the pool was the manager, and he wasn't there. He had gone somewhere that day. I can't remember where he ended up going and why he wasn't there. So at first we were going to work on the Connors law and make it because I think you only had to have one lifeguard up per like 60 kids in the pool at that time. I'm not sure if they even changed that. So we were originally going to try to change that law and make that like mandatory. There's at least two lifeguards up, but we found out that was going to be hard to go about that route. So instead we did the more common sense thing, because it just makes so much more sense that we passed a Connors law in 2013 in the state of Maryland that states that every public pool in the state of Maryland has to have an AED on site and someone there that's knows how to use it to administer it. Because the facts are that if you administer an AED when somebody goes, if you administer an AED within the first 3 minutes, they have a 98% chance to survive with no brain damage. And that's ultimately what killed my nephew, is that he ended up going to cardiac arrest. Yes, he was in the pool for a while, but even the hospital said if they'd been able to administer an AED, chances are he probably would have survived it. And there's been many cases like that. The kids and adults have survived it when you're able to administer the AED quick enough like that. So we made that, we got that passed in the state of Maryland. And now my sister's been working diligently in the state of Florida as well too. We have a guy down there named Rick LaCastro, who's the county commissioner in Collier County District 1. And they adopted the language of the Connors law, and they're following it right now. But he's also helping my sister meet with local state legislatures and even possibly Governor DeSantis and stuff, because we found that we got to pass in our county first, and then another county in Maryland, and then it was easier to pass the state level. Well, the same thing in Florida. We're trying to get it in Collier County first, and then another county. And once you get a couple counties, then it's easier to pass on the state level. Once you get 2 or more states to pass it, then it becomes that much easier to try to get it passed on a federal and national level. So if we can do that, that would be an unbelievable mission for us.
Yeah, like I shared with you, for the viewers that don't know, I lost a brother from a drowning accident when I was younger. So, I believe every pool should have at least AED lifeguards. More than 1 per 60. That's pretty shocking stat there. So, thanks for sharing that. ConnorsCareFoundation.org. You can also donate to help the cause. Anything else about the website, that any events coming up or anything like that?
I'm trying to think. I can't remember my sister's definitely, she just got back from Florida, and then they're going to be in session again in Florida for their government down there starting in November. So I think me and my sister are probably going to try to head down there one more time to meet with some of the local politicians and stuff to try to keep spreading the word. Because Florida, that's the other thing too, Troy. Florida's leads the nation in drowning deaths. So, I mean, to me, it's like a no-brainer. I feel like it would be it'd be a no-brainer to pass that law down in Florida. So, if people want to donate, great. If they just want to go to the website, share it on their local media pages and stuff too, just get the word out. word of mouth is a great thing. Because one of the other things we try to do too, Troy, is we've donated like vans to inner city kids and stuff, so they can at least even get to the YMCA, take swim lessons and stuff. Because the one thing we learned too is that unfortunately it can happen in the blink of an eye. You know, I mean, I remember trying to keep an eye on my 3 kids. So, you know, 1 kid is tough, let alone 3, and it can happen in the blink of an eye. So parents out there, you know, don't forget, just keep an eye on your kids all the time.
Yeah, and like I said, that's important message. So hopefully we can get this nationwide. CounterCaresFoundation.org if you want to know more information, donate, great causes. Yeah, we'll appreciate you sharing that. And thanks for joining us today. I think, unless Will, you have anything else you want to ask Denny before we head out of here?
So with the following of something like that, how would you advise other states to follow that into law with Connor's law? Like, how should we get in touch with our local politicians on our level to make it more aware nationwide, like what the ultimate goal is?
Well, I think, you know, you kind of just even answered the question within your question, to be honest with you, Will, you know, because the best thing you can do is to just reach out to your local politicians. That's how my sister and I started it. You know, we just hit the ground running and stuff, and we just kept beating the doors down to the, you know, and I must say too, this is a bipartisan issue too, because we had, you know, we had politicians on both sides of the aisle, you know, get behind this, because to me, it was like we said, it's a no-brainer. I mean, who doesn't want to protect our kids or, you know, anybody from a tragic preventable drowning accident? So the best thing you can do is just, you know, start getting in touch with your local politicians, you know, and a great time is always in the springtime, right before the pools are getting ready to open up and everything, to really try to hammer home this issue. Because like I said, you know, Will, this is something that can happen so easy in the blink of an eye. And so I feel like it's something that should be near and dear to everybody's heart. And everybody's always going to be out enjoying pools and beaches and lakes and everything else, you know, and stuff. So, you know, the best thing is word of mouth, and just keep spreading the word, you know, and I think if politicians hear it enough, they'll be inclined to make a difference.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you joining us today. We had a great time talking to you. A lot of good memories of your career, and hope to talk to you in the future sometime.
Oh, thanks for having me. And I appreciate you letting me talk a little bit about the foundation as well. You guys are great.
Awesome. Will?
And thanks for me the opportunity to relive my days in the 90s. My brother was one of the bigger Atlanta fans back in the heyday too, because he was a left-handed pitcher and he was a lefty, and he admired yourself and Tom Glavine from your times with the Braves. So I thought that was pretty nifty.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, I appreciate it. And tell your brother I said thanks for me too.
All right.
All right. Denny, take care. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, guys.